The word for today is yield. The source, energy, whatever you want to call it, higher consciousness, God consciousness, looks for you to yield. And by yielding, it finds its way in. Which means that it's possible not to yield and to live a life of resistance and obstruction, solidity, density, being cut off, unconscious, unhappy, unaware of this remarkable, loving, all-knowing emptiness that wants to find the place in you that yields. You can kind of understand how hard it is to yield when you think of Rudy's primary injunction, which is ask for help to surrender. And for those of you who've been practicing Rudy's work for all these years, you know, you keep asking for help to surrender, and what happens? Well, hopefully, there are certain moments along the way where surrender happens. Because you are honestly committed to trying to let that happen. To just get out of the way. And you sort of know when that happens because something in you yields. And the way you know it is by what you feel. And what you feel can be described as an absence or a presence. The absence would be of you and your mind and your identity and your thought patterns and your fears and your ambitions and your hopes, all of that stuff, excuse me, for a few seconds to a few minutes to a day, a week, a month, step aside. And what you feel when there is an absence of that self-reinforcing identity is a feeling of presence. And that feeling of presence is a feeling. And what it feels like is, it's letting go. It's, like I talked about yesterday, it's mommy. Going to mommy. And having her take you in your arms and you know everything is fine. It's going to be all right. It's a feeling of love. It's a feeling of being cared for. It's a feeling of submission, if you will, but not unhappily. It's recognizing your place in the scheme of things, not being required to be more than you are, but to be fully yourself. It's this joyous quietude. It's a sense that everything is in its place and you're part of it. There's a glorious sense of arriving where you belong. These are the feelings that come from yielding. We have an habitual capacity to limit our yielding. And it's crazy, because we love what it feels like when we finally let go. We love it. And yet what happens? You probably each have your own version of this story, but something comes up. and it comes up as a thought usually, or a feeling. Something rises up and goes, but, I use the word but a lot, but there's something that comes up that absolutely obstructs the yield. It's a memory, it's a feeling, it's a doubt, it's a hesitation. Can I sustain this? What if this goes away? What if I'm not worthy? How do I hold on to this? Any thought about I, the I that you think and have always believed yourself to be, any thought that reinforces that or comes back often very gently, and then it's back. It is back. And it's not back gently. It is back full force, and this is completely gone. Absolutely obliterated. And the defense system, the intensity, the darkness, the fullness, the heaviness, the weightiness, the stuff that you don't like about yourself, the stuff you don't like about life, all of it's like front and center, and you are just completely caught in that again. Again and again and again and again and again and again. So, those of you who are spiritual, sit down every day, hopefully with a discipline, hopefully every day. A discipline meaning you don't think about it, you just do it. You sit down and you ask again for help to surrender, help to yield. And what's so interesting to me, especially as a teacher, is watching the yielding in every one of you. And how some of you are good at it, and some of you are not good at it.
Can you let us know which you're which?
You have a lot of time, a lot of trouble, but I will talk about it in a minute.
Maybe we don't.
I guess I deserve that.
The yielding that takes place, the yielding that takes place for most of you is an agreed upon, yes, I surrender. Or the help that you've been asking for arrives. And you really feel it because you really asked and you've been promised biblically that you will receive. It comes. But some of you are sitting there and you are really going, oh God, is he going to work with me? He's going to see how messed up I am today. I'm so tired. I didn't really want to come. All of this stuff is going on in your heads. And of course, it's perceived immediately. Immediately. And it is not judged. It is not a condemning moment. It in no way says that you're a lesser person or an insufficient person or anything. It just says you're a person caught in your identity. You're a person who's caught in the web of yourself, of your ego self. And this unbelievably loving force that you are asking to yield to surrender to, looks at you and finds a way in spite of you, in spite of your mind, in spite of your resistance, your arrogance, your sense of I can do this or I don't need this or you know, whatever your mind is telling you, because it can be any number of things. It doesn't listen to that stuff. It absolutely bypasses your mental process and finds the journey into the part of you that is waiting desperately for it to arrive. The part of you deep inside that is yielding to its arrival. And every one of you is doing that. Every one of you. You all have a vulnerability. Every human being does, but they don't all sit and wait for this to come, so they can spend a whole life and have it never arrive. But every one of you has shown up. Every one of you is in your own way trying to get something here. And that thing that's trying to get is going to get. You may not know that you got it, although that's really rare, because it's so vibrantly present that something in you goes, huh. That may be all you do, but you feel something shifted, something moved, something opened, something connected, something felt good, felt right, and maybe as deep as something felt connected. This thing, this tube of energy went locked into your system, and you were just one with the magnitude of what is. Sometimes that happens. For many of you, it's a kind of digging in. It finds all these avenues you would never imagine. You would never imagine how it finds its way. Because it's looking, just like water that's trying to move through a creek, is looking for the rock that's going to move. It's looking for the way around the soil that's going to break down. It's looking for its way in because that's what it does. That's what it wants to do. And it's looking and looking and looking. And the minute it finds an opening, phew, it goes in. And this person here, this Bruce, right now being open to that flow, watches it happen. And actually kind of is directed into looking for the yielding spot. And so you'll see a lot of movement with my hands in the class. It's absolutely digging through the debris and finding its entry point. And it never, ever stops until it gets in. Ever. There's nobody who arrives here that walks away unfed. Nobody. Even if you don't know the work. You know, it's really interesting. There's someone here today, Michael, who's never done this practice, was as open as any one of you, and as deeply committed and as deeply aware of the energy moving through him. And it's really beautiful. It's the first time I've ever worked with somebody who's not been part of the practice, and I just watched it work. And the energy is so smart. It's intelligent awareness. And it has one goal in life, which is to nurture and sustain your being. Because your being is its being. In fact, there's no you and it except in your own mind. Only in your mind is there a separate self. Only in your mind is there a construction of somebody who thinks, I am having this experience. I am seeing, touching, smelling, hearing. I, whoever your name is having this thing happen. This reality knows there's no you at all. There's just it. It's seeing through your eyes, breathing through your nose, hearing through your ears, tasting through your tongue, feeling through your body. That's what you are. But there's this incredible process that happens, and I've been talking about this almost every time now. There's this process that happens when you were very little of creating a ego-mind self. You sort of need it. You sort of need it to function in the world. Why do we function in the world? Because this world wants to be created. It wants to manifest. It needs us. We are the builders, the creators of life. That's what we do. And we do it through this mind-body construct that has to, for a while, or maybe for the whole time, believe in its separateness. It believes in its mission, in its ambitions. It believes in its hopes, its dreams, its desires. And it's very protected by its fears. You know, it builds in a lot of fears. It brings in pain, it brings in death, it brings in all of these things that make us go, oh, I don't want that, I don't want that. So it locks into, don't do that, do this. This will bring you, it sets up love, passion, desire. It brings in these incredible things like ambition for getting stuff, for building, money. All of this stuff, money, Rudy said, was energy. You want more, 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 more. And it's all part of the construct of making life what it is. Why? I'm not going to go there. I don't have a clue at all, except it seems to want to happen. It seems to want to happen through us. And most of us get lost in being who we think we are, in this mind construct that's there primarily to get us to function in the world. That's what we're here for. The problem with it is there's a lot of duality. So there's good and bad, there's up and down, joy and sorrow, there's all of this stuff going on, and each one of us is caught by that, and it's really basically not fun. So what we keep looking for is the, if I can just hold on to the happiness part. And if I just have enough money, I'll buy my way into that. Or if I have the woman of my dreams or the man of my dreams or whoever it is, that person will give me permanent, absolute happiness. I mean, we hear certain stories, fairy tales, some are other romantic tales, where all of that looks like it's possible. True love will do it. You know, lots of money, you go out and play and have so much fun and everything's wonderful. And then there's this thing, it's called existential truth, which is everything you get's going to be taken away. So you find the person you love, the house that you always wanted, the mansions, you're the president of the United States, I don't care what you get, it's very short-lived. And when you hit my age, 70, you realize, oh my God, I spent my whole life acquiring and now I got to give it all away. What was I doing? Why do you spend all this time to get when it's only there for a moment and then over? So you run into these existential problems. So somewhere along the way, during this life of building and constructing and having and doing all this stuff, if you're lucky, something goes, what am I doing? What is this? This question mark comes in. It usually comes from someone who's very smart and looking at it all very clearly, or someone who is suffering deeply and can't understand why suffering occurs. There's so many ways to get to this thing, which I talked a lot about yesterday, but this moment of come to Jesus was how I described it and how many people do, where you suddenly go, help me. This is too unbearable. It's too painful. And then what happens? The you that is real and that is looking through your eyes and smelling through your nose and hearing through your ears begins to vibrate a little bit louder. It begins to make itself known to you. It may happen because you go to a meditation class or a yoga class, or you may go to Sunday school or religious class or something, and you get a sense of this thing called God, higher consciousness, the unknowable unknown, which is my most recent phrase for it. There's something that becomes present. It becomes an entering quantity that responds to the yielding that you offer. And it comes into you. And it comes into you because in some way you cry out for it. You say, please help me. Or please help me to surrender. Whatever it is, you ask for this and it arrives. It can totally transform your life. Or just gently, mildly transform your life. Some people only want it for a day or two. God comes into your life, fixes everything for a few hours. You go, whew, wow, thank you, God. And you're really, really content. Until the next time this happens, and then you've got to start the whole process all over again because it didn't last long enough. But if you are doing a practice, this meditation practice, of sitting every day and really working this idea of letting go, or if you're exposed enough to life and life does its work on you, which I call the ego-shattering aspect of life, it's going to rip you up. It's going to shatter everything in you ultimately, everything that you're capable of finally letting be shattered. There will always be something left that you finally, the core identity, the core belief. You can take everything from me but Jesus. You know? Well, Teresa of Avila, one of the great mystical saints of Spain, she said what finally released her into the all, into the one, was letting go of Christ. It was the hardest thing for her because it was the one toothpick that she was hanging on to in the sea of unknowing. And you finally have to go to everything. That's the journey that we're all on, every one of us. And we're all hanging on to toothpicks or logs or floating in boats or yachts, on a sea of unknowing. And we're all holding on to all of that, but it's not going to last. It just can't last. And if you're lucky, one of these times that you yield to what is, let's call it what is, that's another great name for it. You can also, again, call it God. But you yield to what is, it fills you up and it stays. The you that wanted it is suddenly revealed to have never actually existed. It was a construct. It was a construct that you built all by yourself. And you bought into it for good reason. It's very sensory. It has a lot of dimension. It gives you a body, a beautiful body, or a terrible body, or an aging body, or a sick body. It gives you all this stuff and you relate to it. You know, it's a body that attracts attention and nobody wants to be near. It gives you a mind that's either, extraordinarily developed and able to really look at life and break it down into its atomic structure, or it gives you a mind that, barely understands, how to get through the day. It gives you whatever it gives you, and you identify. You identify totally with it, absolutely. Why would you not? But when this thing happens that washes that out, you realize it never really was there. You simply are this vehicle through which God, being, consciousness, observes itself. That's all we are. We are the great observers, witnesses of ourself. And there is no person to feel separate from, cut off from, sad because of, elated because of. That person was temporary. And when it gets washed away, well, let me say, you're still going to have a body. There's still going to be a memory of who you were. People are going to relate to you as what you were. And in a way, you're still that. It's just, you're that. I call it, like other people too call it, it's like a light bulb in the face of the sun. Suddenly the sun is shining, that little light bulb doesn't shed much light compared to the truth of what you are. That light shines through you, and the light bulb doesn't have a lot of importance anymore. It's still there. It doesn't completely evaporate until you physically are gone. And when you are physically gone, the thing that shines through doesn't appear to go anywhere. It's shining through everybody. I look at each one of you, and all I see is myself shining back. That's all it is. Any formation of that, it could be 10 people, 1 person, it doesn't matter. It's the self shining back, as this is the self shining at you. This is a self that is now aware of itself. That's the only difference. You're not being aware of it is just because you're not yielding enough. You're still going, but I got to do my art. I got to do my work. I got to pay the mortgage. I got to do this stuff. How can I yield totally and not be one with my demands and my requirements and my needs and my desires? How can I give that up? Well, that's the unyielding thing. And the unyielding thing, interestingly, if it really yields, will make you a better artist, a better provider, a better mortgage payer. It really, because it's so energetic, it's so vibrant, it's so powerful. It may also take you away from all of that, in which case you won't care at all. It's shocking how free we are in our lives. How absolutely it doesn't matter. You will find, or it will find you, however you want to call it. It means you're still separate from it, but you will find a way. You do. I can't tell you how liberating it is to not care what anybody else thinks. Don't care. Doesn't matter. I do whatever I want to do. It's a whole new life for me because I always cared what everybody thought. I don't give a shit. And it's the most wonderful state of being. And it's not like I don't care about anything or anybody. I trust my journey. I trust the moment-to-moment reality of it. And sometimes it's completely fucked up. I described my trip last time to New York. It was absolutely everything that could go wrong went wrong. But in the end, it was a complete teaching tool. I learned more from that misadventure than I do from the good ones. And you start to understand that. Yesterday's class about oceanic sadness. I was feeling oceanic sadness and realized there's no reason for a Bruce character to have sadness. There was nothing about it. And as I said in my class yesterday, this sadness that's there, why is it there? And this voice, if you will, came to me and said, talk about it. And it basically told me because everybody's feeling it. Everybody has it inside. Share it. And I wouldn't have known to share it or to talk about it if it wasn't filling the space that I was in. It was so rich, and the moment there's a Bruce thing that wants to sort of take it as its own, That's very complicated. If those of you who start to get depressed and start to go, oh my God, I'm depressed. No, depression happens. Depression is part of life. Anybody who's a meteorologist knows, there are depressions, there are atmospheric depressions. They affect us. There are individual depressions. There are all these things that happen. The more you own that stuff, the less yielding you become to being lifted out of all that. By not identifying with the density of your experience, the density of your belief system, the density of your fears, without identifying with all of that, what happens is you make space for you to appear. Trust me, you is sitting watching the depression, watching the sadness, watching the difficulty, watching the struggle, watching the elation, watching the accomplishment, doing all of that. It's watching it all. It's actually seeing it right through your own eyes. It's hearing it through your ears. It's just you being aware of it. But the fact that you are unaware of you being there is crazy. The fact that you're unaware that God is right inside you witnessing the world, and you think it's you. What is that about? Well, again, it's built that way. It's not wrong. It's not inappropriate. It kind of needs that to happen. But the great revelation for each of us is that it's not us separately touching life. It's God touching life. And this fact that we think we're doing it is the very thing that needs to be surrendered and let go. The yielding that takes place is to leave that behind and just be. Just be. You wouldn't be here hearing this if you weren't desiring to know it. You cannot stand on the street corner and sell this to many people. It's first of all, it's so simple it's absurd. Secondly, it's so simple that nobody can understand it. And the truth is, it cannot be understood. That's the ultimate truth. To understand anything I'm saying, there has to be a you and an it, and that's the problem. The minute you understand it, you're in trouble. Not understanding is the greatest gift ever. Walking around in endless ignorance and at the same time knowing is what this is about. Just be who you are. I was asked to be part of a series of web talks, an interview by some guy who's got a website called Buddha at the Gas Pump. And I mention it to you because he interviews a lot of amazing people. And the list is extraordinary. Some people you even know. Stuart Perrin is on the list. Steve Ott is on the list. And a lot of people who you don't know, who like Adyashanti, who I think is remarkable. So many wonderful teachers. I'll tell you why I'm saying it. Because not everything I'm saying will register with you in the way it needs to register. But there are all of these people, and there are 300 interviews by this guy Rick Archer, 300 interviews with all of these different people saying exactly the same thing. And so I share that with you because if it's not coming through from this form, go to that site and listen to other people. Because maybe one of them will penetrate. Maybe one of them will allow for the yielding to take place. And I was amazed listening to some of these people because some are wonderfully articulate. Some they're not going to work for me, but they may work for you. And I think the really important thing here is not to think of yourself being devoted to a teacher, but devote to yourself to the discovery of that which speaks to you. That which gets through, that which makes it through the density of the brain or the defenses of the heart. Find the way. And I think it's really important that teachers, and in my case, me particularly here, not feel totally responsible to speak to everyone, because one doesn't. You speak to the ones who can hear your voice in a particular way. So I recommend go to Buddha at the Gas Pump, and I think there are lots of other sites beyond this, but listen to other teachers and let them either amplify what's being said here or give you a new entry point that really works. Because my interest is not having you here, but having you free wherever you are. That's really my interest. And you know, I love to teach and I love to talk and spread this thing in its way, but I'm also happy sitting on the swing in front of my house and just swinging. In fact, I'm probably happier doing that than anything. Followed by the grandchildren, followed by you. It's kind of in that order. And I really recommend that you find the same path. Get to this place of yielding, open to this energy, let it announce itself to you in such a way that you know it's who you are. Get rid of the part of you that thinks you're something else because you don't need it anymore. And find your way to perhaps sharing this with other people, either as a teacher or just as a friend or just as somebody in the environment. Just be it. And then find your way to the swing. And you will know you've had a full life. You will be so content. And you will feel so, I'll use this word because it's coming up for me, you will feel so mothered by yourself. Any questions?
I've heard Adyashanti say that you give your oneness to your teacher or Jesus or the church or whatever until you know you are that. I love that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love Adyashanti, by the way.
Me too.
He's one of the great exponents of what we're talking about. And, you know, if you think you're the only voice in this particular universe, or the one person who's got it right, don't listen to those people. There is no one person who has it. When it flows through, it's emptiness itself. There's no ownership. There cannot be any ownership. And if you sense ownership, I would caution you. Look beyond that.
Can you talk about the relationship of counseling or psychotherapy?
Yeah.
Spiritual?
Yeah. Blanche is asking if I can talk about psychotherapy and therapy in general in relationship to this. I've said this before in class. You all know I've had a therapist. I still do, actually. She's a Jungian, and we're having this remarkable... She's watching this unfolding with a great deal of joy, as am I. And this sharing, she's so fundamental to it in some level. We need help on many levels, and breaking through your own mental construct, finding someone to hear you, finding someone who will listen to you, finding someone who will help you make peace with your abnormalities, if you want to call them that, with your differences, with the parts of you that you don't feel peaceful with. Finding someone who can put things in perspective is very helpful. Someone who's trained to do it can be more helpful than a parent or a friend. You know, I have found extraordinary value in this particular relationship. And I had a therapist when I was a kid, because at 16 I was either going to commit suicide or have to talk to somebody, because I didn't know how to get through life at all. It all looked obstructed. And I had somebody carry me through that period, and it was really important. It didn't bring me to spirituality, but it just brought me into a place where I could work through life. You and I share a marriage counselor, a marriage therapist, who we've worked with now since we were fighting over how to get rid of the New York house. You know, we had such a struggle over, can we let go of this place, and we couldn't find common ground with each other. And this person just helped us find that space where we could both see what we were talking about without the filters of our own possessiveness. And it helped, it truly helped to let go of a construct that absolutely was obstructing our life. So I very much support the idea of therapy, but not to reinforce the ego-minded self so much as to make it healthy enough to let go of it. It's very hard to let go of a sick self. Really hard, because the sickness itself is part of the struggle. If you can make it healthy, like Rudy said, I talked about this yesterday as well, becoming a whole person is the beginning of a spiritual life, he said, not the end. Becoming a whole person, becoming someone who's aware of themselves, who's acknowledging their weakness, who's open to their strengths, who sees that they don't have to hang on to whatever their parents did to them when they were 4 or whatever, or their spouse or whatever. Someone who's able to let go of all of that as part of the endless kind of reconstruction of the same being, the same struggling, sad being. Letting go of that is part of the path. And if you have the right therapist, it's a little bit like yourself shining through. It's just another version of what we're talking about here. Any help you can get. Asking for help comes from a million sources. And I always get it from the most unexpected places. The person next to me on the airplane, the taxi cab driver, whoever. There's somebody who says something who just is the answer you needed. And that if you're open to help and you're open to yielding, the thing that will arrive comes from every direction and through every other being there is, because ultimately the universe is finding its way through to you. And that's what you want. Does that help? Okay. Wait. Wait, 1 second. Wait.
When you talk about, all those responsibilities in life, and it's like really is that thing of growing that life, that also brings me to that thing of, well, it's like, because that kind of builds up on the ego. It's like, I gotta have this, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, to make that happen. But at the same time, when you're trying to let go of all that stuff, to let go what I'm saying? It's like that duality or that conflict.
Absolutely, and almost everybody is in conflict with that. And, I kept meditating through my career. So every day I would go, when I was making a movie, I would sit in the morning before I went to the set, and then I would direct the movie, or be writing a movie, or whatever I was doing. I never let that part of my life go. And that thread wove its way through the entire line of my productive life. And it was necessary. I don't know what I would have done if awakening had taken place in the middle of all that. I cannot tell you, but it didn't. It does for some people. And it changes the direction, it changes everything. But mostly what you do is you just live your life, and you leave this consciousness, this yielding availability to life as part of the construct, and you start to have a better life. The money that you didn't think you're going to get for the mortgage suddenly comes out of nowhere, comes through. I don't know the magic of it. I don't think the magic of it is what we should be looking for, but the flow of it works. It sustains you. And if it doesn't sustain you in the level you were at, it'll sustain you in another level. It may be a lesser level, but what you will discover is you're happy in that space. That's the amazing thing. It may take away, but what it cannot take away in terms of the outer world is this. And so you discover you love your children more than ever. You find that you are enjoying the work you're doing, even though it's perhaps very mundane and very repetitive. Suddenly you're enjoying it and having happiness out of whatever you're doing. However life alters, your consciousness will allow you to appreciate it more and to do it more effectively, more coherently. You'll be able to live a life of real achievement by being available to the flow of it rather than endlessly obstructed by the mind that's saying, I hate this is horrible, I can't stand it, and you're not talking to your kids and your kids aren't talking to you, and then there's all this horrible hostility out there, then you read the newspapers and it amplifies all this stuff, and you watch the news and on, and you become this awful, awful, angry entity, and that's not who you are. So if you can breathe through that during this process of being in the middle of your life, you will find that you can live life gently. And when retirement comes, that's an opportunity for you to let go of all that stuff and really just let this fall away. That's a very natural process. I have friends who are not doing spiritual work, who are living a regular life and who just retire and also get to this. And may or may not find their self, but they find a certain flow and happiness that is very reflective of that self. So they may not have the knowledge of what it is, but they have the experience of what it is. So you don't have to even have spiritual life at all to really connect. But if you really want to have this thing pour through you with profound consciousness, you really have to get deeply out of the way. Really out of the way. And I think that takes a certain spiritual wish and discipline. Because if you're not there, I say this a lot, if there was a room full of people, let's say 6 people, and one person was here every day and they're really, really asking and wanting and being available, and a few people come on occasion and a few people are, kind of a little curious, and I had to give all my energy to one person. Where's it going to go? The person who's asking every day. And the universe works the same way. If it hears a voice going, me, the squeaky wheel, with the grease, me, I want, and you start to really say, I'll get out of the way, I'm cutting this off, I'm letting go of doing all that work, it pays attention. Now, if you're doing all that work and building a massive spiritual ego, saying, look how incredibly wonderful I am, God, it may still come to you, but it's going to shatter that ego and it's going to be painful, and all of your spirituality will go out the window, but you may find yourself. On the other hand, if you truly get humble, it just will go, here you are, and you will go. That's all it will. That's all that happens. Marty's things.
Well, as you know, I've had an ordeal with my foot, and I'm trying to learn from why it happened. Not so much why it happened, but what am I supposed to learn from it? Do you think it has to do with making me yield and
Yes.
slow down?
Oh yeah, slow down. If you can't walk, you slow down. Getting old is about yielding, and most people hate it. What do you mean I can't drive? I mean, it changes everything. Blanche and I had opera tickets that we went to for 25 years, 30 years in LA Opera. We started discovering it took longer to get to the opera than to watch the opera. The traffic was so awful that we gave up the tickets. I never thought I would give up the tickets, but the ordeal to get whatever I might get from that thing finally told me, no more. Done. And I haven't missed it. I go toward the thing that is rather than the thing that was or I might have wanted or should have been or could have been. This changes your life. It also brings you into an unbelievable awareness, if you get there, of compassion for all the people who are hobbled by life. Because you're not the only one, and you're not the first one, and you're not special. You are not being singled out as a spiritual person for, incredible upliftment. The great thing that you discover, this is really humbling, from awakening spiritually, is that there's no benefit. At all. None at all. You still get crucified. It's a big deal. So there's great learning that comes from this. And I can feel it in you because it makes you more humble as a person. It makes you less special. It makes you who you are. And if you sit with that and you just open, and you were very open today, and the energy goes right in, and it just enters you, and there's an incredible space. We can talk privately. There's some stuff here that you've always had, a certain kind of rigidity. But it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because the pool of openness inside you is so big, and it just takes a little channel, which is very available. It's your creative life, right through the top of your head. It goes right down into this, and it's so beautiful, and it's so available. I don't have to pay attention to that other stuff. Neither do you really, but you still do. But you can let go of that, and this channel will come in, and it will make greater and greater and greater creativity. You'll see. It will be wonderful. And you'll be hobbling around on your foot, but the joy of your creative life will just keep expanding. And it will be beautiful. Tony?
I heard in Wade's question a question for myself. When you said that the thread of meditation through your whole career, all you're doing and striving and your own creativity, that the thread of meditation was necessary all through that. I guess I'm wondering, I'm turning that on my head and asking the question, to what degree was the striving, or is the striving, the doing, the career equally necessary?
Oh yeah, it's all one thing. I mean, the great thing about Rudy's teaching is that life's the teacher, which is what I love. He's not going to a cave and figure it out. He's learn it while you're in the middle of all of the manifested state. This manifested state was not here just to avoid. It has some purpose. There's something that wants it to be and puts a lot of energy into making the universe. So you work through the manifested state by holding on to or by digging into the deep well of being. While you're going that way, you're also going this way, and you experience an incredible richness of existence. I'm a real supporter of life in the world, of life being your spiritual guidepost and also the reflection of your life. And it's an amazing reflection, because I get to sit with people like you. That's a reflection to me. And the beauty that keeps surrounding me is I don't take any of it for granted. None of it for granted. But it comes from seeing, when beauty is flowing through you, beauty will flow back into you. It just works that way. If ugliness and mean-spirited unhappiness flows out of you, guess what you'll be looking at? It's just the way it is. Who's going to fix that? Well, no one's going to fix it until somebody says, I can't bear this anymore. It shouldn't be this way. You go to movies and literature, you read about people who have happy lives or spiritual lives. You see that there's another possible life out there. And then you can go, I want that. How do I get there? And that's the journey. And it's misguided in the beginning because you want what they have and all that other stuff, and you're going to go after everything out there. But in the end,
you still want your Hollywood career.
It's a waste of time.
I know.
It's a total. It's really interesting. The career. And I say this over and over. It's a resume in a file cabinet, and it's closed. It had its value, but mostly the value of my career and of any career is what I call ego shattering. And if you lived the life I lived, with the stuff I had to go through, with the people I had to work with, you would probably not want my career. Nobody would. Because every career has that. There's a great movie out about Marlon Brando right now. It's about his life story, narrated by him, interestingly enough. Here's an unbelievably great career, but he talks about it with such honesty. And you realize it doesn't deliver anything. It's just what's going on day to day. It may get really big and grandiose. It may get miserable and corroded. Whatever it is, it's all just happening. And what's just happening is what is, and what is what you are one with. And you can learn everything from it. If it's the worst version, if you're sitting in a solitary confinement cell in a prison, or if you are sitting in the White House, the opportunity for lessons is enormous. And if you learn those lessons, life had a purpose. And if you don't learn those lessons, it was a waste of time. And they say you'll come back. Come back 8 million times until you go, enough. Arcadi's line, enough. It's really powerful. Enough. Okay? Enough? Enough. Thank you.